So welcome back. As we mentioned earlier, President Trump's personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, told CNN tonight that he never said there was no collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia. He also took time, as he usually does, to attack Robert Mueller. When he was asked about recent news on the Russia investigation, there was this.
He just put out that your campaign chairman was playing with the Russians.
But we don't. That isn't what he's. We don't need a special counsel to investigate a campaign chairman. We have him because the president of the United States is involved.
You do when the president of the United States seems to be a little hyperactive about the probe, and it may not be fair. And the guy who was at the head of the AG at the time was his campaign guy.
Probe because I think it's the most inappropriate investigation I've ever seen, conducted on an ethical level that's disgusting.
I just wish you all could have seen Mimi Rocah's face while Giuliani was talking. With us to talk about all of it, Mimi Rocah here in New York, former assistant U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York, now a distinguished fellow in criminal justice at the Pace University School of Law. And we're also joined by another friend of ours, former U.S. attorney Joyce Vance, who spent 25 years as a federal prosecutor. Joyce, it's no fair that you're a remote and Mimi has home field advantage, so I'll start with you. Your reaction to what you just heard.
It seems like Giuliani is intent on both moving the goalposts and narrowing them, because he also said that the only crime Trump could possibly commit would be crimes related to hacking. And of course, we know that that's just not true. But every time Giuliani comes out with this kind of a word salad, it seems like he always does this right before a big story drops. So you have to wonder what's coming next. Clearly, it seems like he's implying there will be proof of some kind of collusion between folks in the campaign, maybe not yet the president, and Russia.
Mimi Rocah, same question with an additional caveat. What's it like to watch that from inside the special counsel's office, provided they have televisions on?
I mean, their face probably looked a lot like mine, which was you can't believe what you're hearing, right? First of all, he's factually wrong. As Joyce pointed out, that is factually and legally wrong. That is not the only crime that is in play here, so to speak. There are at least 5 I can think of, including, a sort of bribery type of conspiracy, quid pro quo, and there's been already lots of evidence about that. There's accepting money or something of value from a foreign country to a campaign. He's also wrong that the special counsel investigation isn't about investigating the campaign manager.
Of course.
Yes, it would be enormous if it turns out that the president colluded with Russia, and there's already some indications of that. But this is about whether a presidential campaign was not just colluding, but conspiring in a criminal way with Russia. And what he does, he doesn't just preempt what's about to come out. He also is, he's playing defense. He's reacting to the fact that what came out in the past week, seems like a year ago, was this evidence about Manafort giving polling data to Russian oligarchs at a time when they were impacting our election or trying to interfere in our election. That is collusion under any definition. Is it criminal conspiracy? We will see. So I think the special counsel's office is probably shaking their head somewhat in disgust at how much he is willing to distort the facts and how little he seems to understand how broad conspiracy law is, frankly.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.